I fundamentally believe that being a good manager and being a good employer the basic issue is communicating well with your employees and communicating in a way that's fair and clear. I hope you won't hear me today talking about things like reversing the dominant paradigm or maximizing human capital management. I think those issues or those concepts are useful, but at the end of the day, most issues can be resolved with communication. Now, smaller organizations, you often require employees to wear many different hats. You may have an executive assistant who does more HR work, account, payroll. There can be a number of different functions that one individual is expected to fill. So at the beginning of the relationship, it is crucial that you talk honestly and openly about what the job is. One title that I often see in all sorts of organizations is program coordinator, especially in community-based organizations that are providing services. Well, what does a program coordinator actually mean in your organization? Are you hiring someone who is just going to implement programs that already exist? You're not expecting them to do anything more than to lead your workshop. Or are you hiring somebody who you're expecting to develop new ideas? Are you hiring somebody who you're expecting to write grant proposals, which is a very difficult skill and is much more involved than leading just a workshop? Are they going to be managing volunteers? Are they going to be managing other employees? Are you actually interviewing and looking for that kind of skill? And what kind of basic work is involved? If you're asking a program coordinator to run a program, does that mean getting in early, setting up the chairs, making sure there's coffee? You need to think at the beginning of the relationship, what am I asking this person to do? What role are they going to fulfill? Because if you don't have that communication up front, there's two issues that are going to come up immediately. One, if you're hiring somebody to just run programs with no input and they have 20 years of program coordinating experience, they're not going to be happy in your organization, and it's not going to work out. There's going to be a tension between what you've asked them to do and what they think they can do in that role. You also could have an employee who has done a wonderful job and they've delivered this program, but it wasn't anything what you asked them to do. You asked them to do X, but you weren't clear on what that was. They've delivered a wonderful Y, but at the end, it's not what you've asked. So at the beginning of the employment relationship, we need to talk to the person we're hiring and say, look, these are the duties, this is what's expected, and this is what our organization's philosophy is, and this is how we see you fitting into that philosophy and our structure. When you're handing out an assignment to an employee or when you're talking to the employee about a project, you are the best resource. If you don't know what you're asking the employee to do or how to do it, you either have to find out or you have to be open and say, look, this is a new project. We're going to work together to try to get us to this new program. Here's what I think we need to do, but talk to me throughout the course and so that we can make sure we're on the same track. One other area that employers can use, or one other resource employers can use to manage communication, are policies. How many of you have what I'll call written employee handbooks? So not many. And that's not atypical to find in a smaller organization. And I'm not saying every organization needs to have an 80-page employee handbook legally reviewed, and it's all bound and handed out to employees, but you need, I think, to have some basic policies about expectations. Whether those can be attendance, what your discipline policy is. Obviously, everybody should have harassment policies in place and procedures in place for dealing with employee complaints. But policies are a very effective tool in making sure that you're all communicating together and you're all on the same page. An employer should never be surprised by a certification application from a union. And the reason I say that is because if you are surprised, it means there are serious issues that have happened in your organization and you don't know what they are. Walk the floor it comes out of it's an industrial concept, but it applies everywhere. And essentially it's very common sense. It means be visible. You cannot manage and you cannot lead from behind a closed door. It's just absolutely not possible. If you want to have good employee relations, you have to be visible as managers and you have to be out front of issues. You have to be hearing complaints raised by employees and be accessible as a resource, and also be seen as someone who will do something about it. There's a phrase from the Supreme Court that justice must not only be done, but also must be seen to be done. And if you're sitting behind a closed door, there's two, what I think are fundamental issues. One is you have no knowledge of anything that's happening in your office. And that's a problem because, again, you're either surprised by a large issue or you're late in responding. We'll talk a little bit more about how to respond to issues. But the other fundamental problem is your people who are reporting to you or the people in the office don't trust you. If you're behind the closed door, what they're going to say is, well, you know, Jim is behind the door, he's never here, why would I go to him with an issue? Because he's not going to care. One of the other things that may come up is rumors may start in your organization, particularly in these times, that we're in trouble. You know, the sky is falling, we're all going to lose our jobs, and if you're not out front and if you're not visible, you can't counteract that. In a review, you can set out what your expectations are of the individual and what the organization's expectations are. You can talk about what's working, what's not, and you can develop ideas about how to make things work. If there's training that needs to be done, computer training, leadership training, management training, you can actually get those resources and identify it early so that you don't have somebody who you think is just a poor performer, but it's really because they haven't had access to the appropriate training or resources. You can find out if you as an organization are meeting their expectations, and if not, why. Obviously, you can find out, and you'll know, if they're meeting your expectations. But apart from the formal review process, constant chatter means that you're also giving informal reviews. It's very helpful for employees to know if they're doing a good job or not, long before their annual performance review. An employee shouldn't be surprised at the annual performance review if you say, hey, you're not performing well. If you haven't talked to them, you know, for 12 months, and then you sort of blindside them with a bad review, I think that's the employer's problem, it's not the employee's problem. You can't lead them on to think that they are just a star performer. And I see this in litigation all the time, that, you know, I'll get in a claim and it'll say, you know, so-and-so was a high performer within the organization. Well, if so-and-so was a high performer, they would still be with the organization. But what it means is the employer never actually communicated to the employee that things weren't working out. Constant chatter also allows you the opportunity to teach as your managers and as supervisors of employees or heads of organizations. You have the most institutional knowledge for somebody who's reporting to you, likely. And that allows you to say, okay, here's how we do things. Here's what we're expecting. And if the employee has a good idea, then you can take that, recognize it, and adapt to it. So think about your own organizations and think about what times or what projects you could use to provide meaningful recognition. If you've asked somebody to take on a whole new program, to develop a service, and they do it, well, isn't that a wonderful time to actually recognize it? Because actually, pay increases, they don't do what most people think they do. Giving somebody a bonus of a certain amount doesn't necessarily motivate them to keep going. That bonus is astronomical, and then we get into the whole mistake in the United States and all that kind of stuff. Now, what bonuses do is just say, okay, you've done a good job, but this is all part of our usual compensation. And it always comes at the same time, so employees have this expectation that they're going to get a bonus as long as they didn't screw up. But if during the course of the year they've done a wonderful job, I think that there's a lot of value if you take the time and recognize that. Doesn't mean you have to throw them a gala celebration, but I've seen very effectively send around an email saying we all want to congratulate Jim. Jim has taken on this initiative. He's raised participation in the program by 95%. He's doing a fantastic job. Well done, Jim. And that actually has a lot of meaning to employees. It also allows your organization to set standards about what we expect. If you hear of an issue, you have to respond immediately. And I say that on two fronts. One is just for the sake of your organization and for the employee and for you, You can't allow an issue to fester. From a legal standpoint, if you do not respond to an issue, well, that is going to be held against you in any sort of tribunal, any sort of court. If you've allowed something to go on, a practice to develop in your workplace, it's very hard to change that practice. When you listen to them, you'll find out what suggestions they may have. Maybe they have a very easy solution to it. You don't have to start running off and calling legal counsel and getting all your managers involved and wasting 2 weeks. You also want to listen for what the desired outcome is. So what is the employee expecting you to do? Sometimes you make some changes that really don't fit and they don't address the underlying problem. So after you've talked to the employee, you have to do an investigation. And I do appreciate that you're wearing 17 different hats in smaller organizations. But you can't allow a problem to arise and not investigate it. You have to talk about who's involved. You got to talk to all the people. You don't promise confidentiality. You say that you will respect confidentiality, but you can't promise it. You have to take notes about what was said, by whom, what people are expecting. And you have to do it immediately. Particularly in harassment issues. If you've heard that there are comments being made in the workplace, or, God forbid, an actual physical altercation, you can't say, look, I'm busy, I'll get back to you in a couple of weeks and we'll sit down and we'll go over everything. You need to respond immediately. Once you've done your investigation, obviously you can consult your legal counsel if you have one. If you don't, consult your peers, consult other managers. There are very few issues that are absolutely unique. Often people have dealt with things before and they can provide advice. When you respond, you want to respond in writing, because what you don't want to say at the end, or you don't want to call your lawyer and say, look, I've talked to Jim and he should have known that this was an issue. I get this all the time. We had many conversations about it. He should have known that this was a problem. Well, always Jim won't have known, or it wasn't clear what the problem was, or wasn't clear what he was supposed to do about it, and he wasn't clear why you were upset. So it has to be in writing. The reason it has to be in writing is two things. One, as a lawyer, I like to see things in writing. That's the only proof I have that this was actually given to Jim, and he knew about the issue, and so that when we have performance correction or a dismissal, I can be confident that we've done our legwork and you've laid the groundwork for future discipline. But it's also the only fair thing to do for an employee. The employee needs to have notice of what they've done wrong. You have to be fair to them, and by providing them in writing with, here's what the problem is, here's what we've done, here's how we're going to correct it, that's just fairness, and that's at the base of the employment relationship. You have to have the difficult conversation, and this is where managers of all seniorities fall down. Nobody likes having that difficult conversation with the employee. Nobody likes to say you're not doing the job. But you have to. It's absolutely crucial. And again, if you delay too long, then the opportunity has passed you by and you've allowed 6 months to elapse of poor performance that could have been corrected if you had just sat down and said, look, this isn't working. Here's why we think it's not working. You've told us it's not working because of this. Here's what we're going to do about it. We'll meet in 3 months again and we'll talk and see where we are. And it may sound mean for me to say this, but you have to put your organization before the person. As managers, you're protectors of your organization. You have limited resources to provide the services that you all provide. You have short periods of time to get things done. And so your focus has to be on your organization and how you're going to deliver what you said you will deliver to either the community or to your clients or to people who access the services. And it's okay to put the organization before the person as long as you're being fair. And this gets back to our very beginning discussion with the employee up front. If they know what's expected, if they know what the position is and what duties and responsibilities that they're expected, then they can't later come and say, well, that was unfair that, you put a written warning in my file because, I didn't do this. But if we have had that hard communication at the beginning and that honest communication at the beginning, then you're going to be in much better shape later on down the line when you either have to deal with performance management issues.